The video will be hosted, and Robert, if you could please start the recording now. Julie, could we please call for the President and apologies?
Thanks, Provost, and good morning, members. Provost Claire Leach.
Here.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Present, thanks.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
I'm here, thanks.
Councillor John McFadden. Deputy Provost John McGee.
Here.
Councillor Caroline Barton.
Yeah.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor David Richardson.
Present.
Councillor James Adams.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Douglas Reid.
Here.
Councillor Jane Sangster.
Here, good morning.
Councillor Graham Vartan.
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
Councillor Graham Boyd.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Councillor Barry Douglas.
Good morning, here.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Here, thanks, Julie.
Councillor Peter Maben.
Good morning, Julie.
Thank you. Councillor Claire Maitland. Yeah. Online. Yeah. Councillor Jim Todd.
Here.
Councillor Beverly Clark.
Here.
Councillor Sally Cogley.
Here.
Councillor Kevin McGregor.
Here, thank you.
Councillor Linda Maben.
Here, Julie, thanks.
Councillor William Lennox.
Good morning, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Alison Simmons.
Here.
I have an apology from Councillor Billy Crawford. Councillor June Kyle.
Present, Julie.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Julie, thanks.
Councillor Neil Watts.
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Drew Filson.
Yep.
Councillor Jennifer Hogg.
I'm here, thank you.
And Councillor James Kyle. Thanks, members.
Julie, thank you very much. Members, if you could just indulge me for a few moments, and I'll go through some Provost remarks of things that we've been up to recently. So it was Mauchline Burns Club Wreath Laying on Sunday the 18th of January. It was a pleasure to lay a wreath at the Mauchline Burns Club annual wreath laying at the National Monument in Mauchline in memory of Scotland's national bard Robert Burns. Afterwards, we all enjoyed some brilliant entertainment at the Burns Memorial Cottages Pavilion. Well done to everyone involved in keeping this annual event running. Citizenship ceremony at the Burns Monument Centre on the 21st of January. Members, one of my favourite events I have is the honour of carrying out presenting people their newly gained citizenship. These ceremonies involve taking an oath of allegiance and pledge of loyalty to the country, and those gaining this status are presented with their certificates which serve as legal evidence as their acquisition of British citizenship. I always really enjoy speaking to the recipients and their families afterwards, all of whom come from a range of personal circumstances, with many receiving their citizenship already having lived in their communities for many years before getting to this point, and others who speak about having fled war and persecution. An especially memorable one from the past was a young girl who told me that before coming to Scotland, she never knew what it was like to not live in fear, to be able to consistently go to school, even go on walks outside and play with her friends. Well, members, as I told her on that day, we're very proud to have you call here home. Holocaust Memorial Day on Tuesday the 27th of January. This year, as always, we invited pupils from secondary schools across East Ayrshire to join us here at the Chambers to mark Holocaust Memorial Day. And not to forget that for the first time, we also had a primary school with us too. A big thanks to Auchinleck Primary School. This year's theme was Bridging Generations. This is a reminder that the responsibility of remembrance does not end with survivors. It lives on through their children, their grandchildren, and in all of us. By doing so, we build a bridge between memory and action, between history and hope for the future. On the day, pupils gave their school some really excellent presentations of their learning before lighting candles together and a minute's silence. Thank you to every school who participated. The Malky McCormick exhibition at the Dick Institute on the 5th of February. Many of you will know the works of Malky McCormick, one of Scotland's best loved cartoonists, with their colour, humour and moments that will be familiar to many of us. We're delighted that Malky's daughter Jane entrusted a substantial personal archive of his work over at East Ayrshire Leisure Trust, which are now on display at the Dick Institute in Kilmarnock, with the exhibition entitled Malky McCormick, A Life in Colour. The collection even includes a well-known Killie suit that daughter Jane told me was famously made for the blue and white striped fabric hand towels acquired for the Fenwick Hotel toilets, and his much-loved banjo he was said to take everywhere with him. But the Fenwick Hotel were in on it apparently, so it's fine. After a wee trip down memory lane, next door to this exhibition is a young people's gallery where you can see an exhibition of caricatures by local young people who participated in a series of weekly classes called Caricature. It's well worth a visit, members, if any of you have not seen it yet. It's absolutely brilliant. Army engagement event on the 12th of February. I was invited along to the Ayrshire-wide Meet Your Army event. This was held by the MOD's engagement team that covered Ayrshire. This event aims to promote a greater understanding of the Army, particularly amongst those who have not been exposed to it in the past. It was very informative hearing about the opportunities available to people, and in particular the Army cadets. That wee guy on the screen was also at our Holocaust Memorial Day, a great young person. It was great to meet so many dedicated individuals who serve our country and hear their personal stories of courage and commitment. Well, members, we'll move on to business proper. Thank you for that. And first is declarations of interest. Members, you will always know best. If anybody has any declarations, please make it known. No, we all good? Okay. Moving on, this is for the previous minutes of our meeting on the 11th of December, and I will move as a correct record.
Second, Provost.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Members, before I open it to the floor, I thought it may be helpful to ask our Chief Executive for matters arising, particularly recommendations for the task force in health and social care's governance arrangements. Is that okay?
Thank you very much, Provost. Morning, members. Given the quite right discussion that the Council have had at both the 11th of December and the 29th of January, focusing on health and social care, and in particular the budget position around that. Indeed, it's not just discussion, it was concerns and instructions for actions that elected members gave us. I thought it was important, before we moved on to setting the budget, that we highlighted the actions that have been taken since then. So the first action, as we saw, towards the end of the year, it would still appear that there was an increase in spend, within health and social care. So the first actions were taken to actually stem the increases in spend and flatline that. There was then work to implement the existing financial recovery plans, and I know many of the members will be contacted by constituents who have seen changes happening in health and social care as the existing recovery plans are done. We then took additional control measures to minimise spend in 25-26. This has seen a service impact in terms of the services that we can provide. For instance, how quickly we can provide services to people coming out of hospital, and it's also limited workforce in terms of recruitment within the Health and Social Care Partnership. Both of these clearly have an impact, but it's about balancing that impact with our financial controls. One of the main actions was how we look forward in terms of governance, and we had at that time what we called, a task force. We have now consolidated that task force to our Health and Social Care Recovery Assurance Group, continued to be chaired by myself, supported by the Director of Finance and Digital, Chief Governance Officer, the Director of Health and Social Care, Chief Social Work Officer, Head of Community Care, and we now have additional support and capacity through our former Deputy Chief Executive, Alec McPhee, coming in to particularly support Joe, but also give wider assurance, within that as we go forward. We've worked to get more detailed assurance and governance measures being implemented within the Health and Social Care Partnership for 26-27, making clear accountability from practitioners, frontline managers, intermediate managers, up to chief officers. This is a paper that will be brought to Council on the 2nd of April for all councillors to see. Alongside that will be a transparent budget that the IJB is able to delegate to the Health and Social Care Partnership, which is obviously the delegation to the Council, and a clear plan about how that is kept within financial governance. So members can see the actions that require to be taken after the decisions that are taken today, in terms of the allocation to the IJB. There's also been work in terms of, members were very clear about how we work with our colleagues in the NHS was very important. So there's also been a group formed, a Pan-Ayrshire Transformation Group, in relation to how the three councils, the three IJBs and the Health Board work together, with a clear plan. It's always been the plan that we all hear about, is how do you shift resources from hospital-based services to community-based services. So the second full meeting of that group that involves 3 councils, IGIB's Health Board, at the most senior levels, will take place here again this afternoon. That's a group that I chair on a pan-Ayrshire basis, and we will continue to report back. Again, the terms of reference to that will be brought alongside the terms of reference and governance, for the Health and Social Care Partnership here on the 2nd of April. Over and above all that, you can see the work that we've taken just now has been about how we mitigate, the pressures just now and seek assurance, going forward. We do still need to understand how we got here, what could or should have been done differently, and that then becomes the next stage that we move on to. So we've taken the immediate actions, to control what we've done just now, but we still need to move forward to understand, how we got to this point and what could and should have been done differently. So that's the actions, Provost, that we've taken, over the past number of weeks to get us to a point where we as officers can feel that we can support the Director of Finance and Digital, bring a budget forward to you for your consideration today with a level of confidence.
That's really helpful, Eddie. Thanks very much for that. Members, is there any other questions in relation to the previous council minutes? Okay, we're good to move on. Item 3 is the Cabinet Committee minutes for approval. Leader.
Moves a correct record, Provost.
Thank you.
Second that, Provost.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Any questions? Okay, members, moving on then. Thank you. So members, we are on to the medium-term financial strategy setting the 26-27 revenue budget. Members, this is to consider and remit the recommendations, of which there's a copy enclosed from the Cabinet minute held on the 25th of February. Please refer to the Cabinet report on this matter issued to all members on the 19th of February. Members, I did think it would be helpful just to go through the order of debate and time for speeches, just to go over those. So in respect to the revenue budget paper, I'd ask Council to know, in accordance with standing orders, the mover of a motion or amendment should speak for no more than 10 minutes, with the succeeding speakers entitled to speak for no more than 5 minutes. The original mover shall have the right to speak for no more than 5 minutes on reply. And members, if I could ask you super kindly, just please respect my position as chair. I know many of you do. It can be challenging sometimes when there is really heated debates going on, but I would appreciate the professionalism, as I know you all do show. So, members, we now consider remit and recommendations from the Cabinet meeting held on the 26th of February, and I'll open to the floor. Leader.
Thanks very much, and respect your words, just that you said at your introduction there, Provost. Provost, colleagues, I would first of all like to thank the Chief Executive, Director of Finance and staff for all their assistance in putting together this year's budget for 2026-27 and probably the most challenging circumstances this Council's ever faced. With an overall static and older population with declining school rates in some areas and a growing ASL community, financial pressures continue to grow. None more so than in the Health and Social Care Partnership, reported at previous councils, and an earlier £10 million gap, which I know our officers are addressing strenuously. This year, our priority has been with one goal: to deliver a balanced budget with less impact on council services as possible and less burden on our council taxpayers as can be managed. We do not have a great list of new initiatives in areas of spend, which is a normal feature of this budget setting process, but I am pleased to report that we have a balanced budget that keeps us within our financial reserve strategy within the 2% limit, and I'm pleased to report that due to the diligence of our service directors, we are able to propose a council tax level less than that presented in today's paper. We propose a council tax increase for this year of 6.9%, which, while is still higher than we wished, is less than many other councils in Scotland, particularly our neighbours in Ayrshire, while keeping this council on a steady financial footing. While we have no announcements from this year's budget to present today, we still have decisions to make on our £40 million Early Intervention and Prevention Fund. This fund has served us well over recent months, with many helping to tackle poverty, improve employment and training opportunities, attainment and inclusion in schools. And a list of just some of the things that we've done so far. It's quite commendable what we've achieved. In the first year of our anti-poverty and equality strategy, with a direct investment of 1.1 million, and to name a few, groups from Stuart Nannock Youth Group, the Nest in Cumnock, Galston Community Development Trust, Hereford Tool Library, Helping Hands Drungan, Shortleys Community Association, all benefited from this process. Our future partnership, we've been able to match 600,000 of the government money to a total investment of 1.2 million over 3 years. This funding has been evenly split between 3 community organisations: Centre Stage, Kilmarnock, Yipworld and Cumnock, and the Zone in Dunmelliton. As of September last year, 352 individuals have received person-centred support packages. We've also helped family finances and action in child poverty through our preschool clothing grants and school meals. And one final example, which I'm particularly proud of, is the 4.5 million continuation of our investment in our Young People's Jobs and Training Fund, which has delivered 250 jobs since 2022. So, as we heard yesterday, we're also delivering an ambitious capital programme with £170 million projects, and we've many there, from the AMEC corridor to Stuart Academy refurbishment, waste review in Western Road, loads, 170 million ongoing projects right across East Ayrshire, £172 million worth, including £70 million in Kilmarnock Town Centre. And both in Kilmarnock Centre and widely across East Ayrshire, half the money in that capital investment has come in from other sources. So it's not just it's about the council levering money for other sources to make sure the most money is spent in our communities. Provost, I'm thankful to my colleagues and councillors from other groups who have agreed to have an in-depth look at what is and what isn't working within the early intervention and prevention programme, and we have agreed to have an in-depth look at what is and what isn't working, what is making a difference to our communities and what is less so. So we'd like to hear from all councillors, look at new initiatives and what will work best for the people of East Ayrshire. We're willing to hear from, I know we've got some good ideas in the SNP group, but I know that others have ideas too, and we want to hear from them. So I've therefore asked the Chief Executive and Head of Finance to make our early arrangements to hold a summit in the south of the authority in the next 45 weeks, where we can discuss the East Ayrshire Early Intervention and Prevention Fund, and details will come to members on that. I'm deeply indebted for this budget to my own SNP colleagues, the Labour Group and others who have made this possible to achieve this balanced budget. So therefore, Provost, I would like to move to propose a council tax increase of 6.9%, a Band D rate of £1,717.28. Provost, I move.
Leader, thank you very much. Councillor Linda Maben.
Thanks very much, Provost. I want to start off with some honesty, because anything less would be an insult to all the people we serve within East Ayrshire. So here we are, another year, another budget, another set of cuts and rises. None of us in this room come into public service to raise council tax year after year, or stood for election to continually make decisions about cuts. We stood because we all care about our communities. We wanted to make people's lives better. But caring doesn't exempt us from reality, and reality has brought us to where we are. On the proposed 6.9% council tax rise, yes, of course, we looked at lower options. We looked at 4% or 5%. These increases would have been easier to explain, easier to defend, easier to live with. However, once we truly saw the scale of the financial gap, particularly from within the IJB, those percentages were not just inadequate, they were irresponsible. Choosing them would have meant knowingly approving a budget that did not add up. That would have been negligence. We had a duty to act. I sit in the IJB alongside the leader and other elected members. We see and hear the reality of what is happening. It is serious, and it's already pushing services and people to the edge. These extra percentage points on council tax, they were not added lightly. They were added because, quite simply, pretending this gap doesn't exist would have been dangerous, and a conscious choice to pass an even bigger crisis down the line. We also have to be honest about council tax itself. It is regressive. It always has been. For some households, it can take up to 5% of their household income. For others, it takes barely 1%. That's not fair. We know it, the public know it, and that imbalance cannot be ignored any longer. The scale of this increase and the rises being imposed across the country are not the results of councils losing control. They are a result of years of Scottish Government funding settlements that have failed to match reality. Inflation level uplifts don't protect services. They strip them back until something breaks. And when they break, it's real people that pay the price. We also owe the public honesty about overspends. Some are indeed caused by events that no one could have predicted. We all remember COVID. Some come from trying to do more than our finances can realistically sustain. And yes, some come from a lack of strong financial management. Ignoring overspends does not make them disappear. It makes them worse. Acting in these gives us choices. Refusing to act leaves us none. Transparency is not optional. It's essential. We all know how hard this is. It's hard for us as elected members, it's hard for staff, but most of all, it's hard for the people out there that rely on our services. I want to place on record my thanks to Joe and his team who have worked under relentless pressure to bring this budget forward in such circumstances none of us would choose, least of all them. This is not just about figures in a spreadsheet. Every decision we make in this chamber affects someone. They land in real kitchen tables, they land in care homes, they land with families who are already doing everything they can just to get by. We feel the human cost too. Being asked to do more with less, it takes its toll. Staff morale, service quality, waiting times, people's well-being. None of us should pretend otherwise. This budget is not about cuts for the sake of it. It's not about political comfort, and it's not about avoiding hard truths. It's about confronting reality head on. Doing nothing was not an option. Pretending was not an option. Passing the problem on was not an option. Provost, this is not the budget I had hoped to second, but we must put aside political differences. We must take responsibility and do the right thing by the people of East Ayrshire, and we must get the IJB back on a more financially sound footing. So I therefore second these budget proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mabin, but some points really well made. Members, at this point, I will take any amendments to the motion set, and then I'll open it to the floor for further discussion. Councillor Neil Watts.
Thank you, Provost. I would like to express my thanks, as I did yesterday, to Joe and the finance team. They do a really fantastic job. The Conservative group and I believe that as a council, we need to be seen to be setting a prudent and responsible budget for our communities across East Ayrshire at a time when hard-working people have their backs to the wall. Hang on a sec. At a time when hard-working families, and pensioners across East Ayrshire have their backs to the wall and are struggling to make ends meet. A rise of 6.9% that is now proposed in council tax, which is still more than double the current rate of inflation, is in our view still unacceptable and will only continue to add to severe financial pressures that families, pensioners, single parents, and every other member in our communities are currently facing. With this in mind, and as I have an assurance from the Chief Financial Officer that we can balance our budget with a 5% rise, as is stated in the papers before us, I would move the following amendments to the report's recommendations. Number 6, that the Band D council tax level for 2026-27 will be increased by 5%, keeping council balances low, with other bandings increased accordingly, therefore not accepting the extra 3% increase to replenish the general fund uncommitted. Little 8, fees and charges budgets will be increased by 3%, with service proposals for increase detailed at Appendix 2, other than those previously approved as part of the service reviews or are set out nationally or by partners, with the exception of A, freezing the eradication and infestation charges at £48, and B, reversing the garden waste permit increase agreed last year and freezing it at a cost of £40 per permit. And little 11, which is a new addition in, which would be to agree that staffing service savings of the 730,000 within the education budget are monitored across the year so that children of East Ayrshire do not suffer any reduction in their educational needs. And that is the Conservative amendment, which I will in a moment send to everybody. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Councillor Watts. Thank you. Do you have a seconder for your motion? Councillor Adams. Yep, so see for the record, Councillor Adams, could you just state that you're going to second the motion, please?
Yeah, sorry, I thought one of my colleagues was doing that, but they're
Absolutely
maybe
grand.
stumbling online.
No worries, thank you. David?
I was just to confirm, Councillor Adams, you obviously as a seconder have up to 5 minutes to speak in support. You can take that now or you can take it prior to conclusion of the debate. So it's just looking for clarification if you want to say your piece now or hold your powder.
Later on is fine, thank you.
Not a problem. Councillor Graham Boyce.
Thanks, Provost. I just put my hand up. I've not got any amendment, obviously. So are we on to the debate now, yeah?
Yeah, but
Aye.
just check, councillors, that anybody else got any amendments to make? Okay, Councillor Boyle, before I let you in, I'll just let Joe McLaughlin in to speak about amendment and then I'll bring you in straight away, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Joe?
Thank you, Provost. Good morning, members, and Councillor Watts and I have discussed the motion. In relation to the council tax, you know, yesterday we explained that the council tax for next year, or the budget next year, is set and balanced at a council tax of 5%. But I sought Cabinet approval yesterday to add an additional element onto that council tax in order to replenish the funds that will be paid to the IGIB later on before 31st of March this year, in order that they can start 2026-27 in a balanced position. The estimate of that fund so far would be that if that was to happen, and I believe my strong recommendation to you is that it should happen, then once that has taken place, then the general fund uncommitted balance with a 5% council tax and with the replenishment taking place means that the budget is balanced. However, the general fund uncommitted balance at that point is below the 2% threshold. It's at 1.9%. So my recommendation would be at that point, sub 2% is when auditors and others begin to ask some very detailed questions about the financial sustainability of the council going forward. So that's the first part to consider. I think it's extremely relevant that the budget is balanced at 5%, but it's the replenishment of the funds to the IGIB that then takes the general uncommitted balance sub 2%. The other points around the freezing of the infestation and the garden waste contracts, that would come at a cost, and that cost is estimated to be circa £160,000, which at this point in time doesn't have a home. So the funding of that would be potentially through you, Provost, to maybe inquire as where that the funding to support that part of the amendment would be taken from, please.
Okay, thank you. Joe? David?
Long things, but just in a procedural point, maybe just ask Councillor Watts, you made reference to a new recommendation 11, Councillor Watts, which would involve monitoring arrangements of at least one education saving. If I could maybe just ask you, just for complete clarity, if you could just refer to the Cabinet papers at page 24 and 25. The education, well, all the savings are set out, nobody's picking in education, so all the savings are set out there that were presented to Cabinet and are before Council today. And it was just for that clarity on which of those lines 1 to 7 would be the ones that you would be looking to include in your amended recommendation? Is it all 7 or is it just some of them? It's just for clarity.
Thank you, David. It's item 7, which is the £730,000, the staff saving cost.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. Members, I'll just ask finally if there is any amendments, or I will open it to the discussion. In the interest of fairness, I'm going to go through my list. Councillor Graham Boyd. Leader, point of order, go for it.
It's just in terms of clarification of the Section 85 officer, where that 730 and that 160 would leave us in terms of reserves.
So through you, so the 730 is not a withdrawal, it's just to agree monitoring arrangements, so that still stands. In terms of the 156, it would mean, depending on what motion passes, that the uncommitted balance at 31st of March would be further sub 2% at this point.
Okay, helpful. Yeah. Councillor Graham Boyd.
Thanks, Provost. Really interesting so far. Some areas were unaware and no saying caught out, so I've got a couple of questions to ask before I was going on to my main point. So the 6.9% from SNP and Labour looks like, can we who weren't involved in the talks have an explanation of where the 1.1% comes from? And also at the Conservatives 5%, Councillor Watts seems to be pulling a warning full of rabbits out there. Where's this 3% coming from? You know, maybe it's been explained, you know, it sounds very interesting and the public would love it, but where's the money coming from? So these points here, and then just to the point I was going to speak about anyway. So even if it goes up 6.9%, I'm sure that's what it looks like if the Chamber agrees, the public is still getting less for paying more. And when I say less, I mean frontline services. We know about greener communities being cut to the bone until they became dysfunctional. The condition of our roads, cuts to classroom assistants, and I've said before, teachers buying resources out of their own pockets. I just feel frontline services have been cut enough. We can't keep cutting frontline services. So how else do we solve these budget problems? Because we do have to have a balanced budget. There's only 2 areas I can see. One is absence, which we're working on. We need to bring the absences down. And the other is staff costs, because I think half the revenue budget goes in wages. So as the council contracts, we really need to start reducing staff numbers accordingly to council contraction. But I must emphasise, if we go down that route, it can't be at the expense of frontline services. It cannot be at the expense of frontline services.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Leader.
It's just to respond. I mean, I think Linda made it in her when she seconded. We're all too aware, you know, after these grown-up conversations, nobody wants to take money away from frontline services. We want our budgets to balance, and we want that to impact as less in terms of our communities as possible. That's clear, but my door is always open, and I've spoken to most of the council, and I'm sure the Labour group have too. And it's about having these conversations and coming up and making real decisions that have the minimum impact, but going away with, you know, other issues in terms of what we heard last week about in terms of borrowing, etc. That takes us further away from our ability to deliver and protect frontline services. But we'll have a discussion on that later on. But it's the specific issue on the 6.9%. That was due to new information that came in about the savings that the Health and Social Care Partnership were able to make. So I don't know if Section 85, if the Director of Finance wants to elaborate.
Thanks, Leader. Joe?
Thank you. So some weeks ago, we anticipated that the request for that headroom, the difference between the gap or the overspend and the requirement to balance at year end would be at a certain level. That was based on the Chief Officer of the IGB and colleagues highlighting, I think it was in December or last month, that with a fair wind, and I think that's now confirmed, that £1.445 million could be made through a number of actions prior to 31st of March. That figure has increased. It's no longer 1.445, it's now 2.036, as I mentioned to Cabinet yesterday. That gives sufficient headroom to allow for the council tax changes to take place as described.
Okay, thanks, Joe. That okay, Councillor Boyd?
Yeah, thanks, Joe, for explaining that. I just wasn't aware, and maybe some of the other independents weren't, but that's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barry Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. We could have political posturing here. I mean, it's weeks away from a holiday election, but you know what? We have put aside political differences. The two biggest groups have agreed what I think will be the lowest council tax rise across Ayrshire. I note that North Ayrshire raised theirs 8.5% yesterday. I understand that the proposals being considered by South Ayrshire are 8%. The reality is we are dealing with the problems we have faced in our IGIB. And for me, a 5% rise, I would love to have a 5% rise. I'd love to have less. I'd love to have a freeze. Of course we would, if we were dictating the terms of that freeze. But the reality is our public services need investment. And yes, there are cuts. And yes, it is a difficult sell when people are getting less and paying more. But the reality is, if we go with the proposals that the Conservative group have put forward at 5%, what is that going to mean to the people out there who are waiting in care packages, those who are bed blocking in hospital, waiting desperately to get home? That is financially irresponsible. And as the Conservative group leader, is a member of the IGIB and has been for some time, along with the leader of the council and the deputy leader of the Labour group, surely he will know and sees firsthand some of the difficult situations that we've been faced. He is hearing directly as a member of the IGIB, but yet has decided to go for a bit of political posturing at 5% so he can grab a headline, rather than protect essential public services here in East Ayrshire. We need to get real about this. This problem's not going away. We can't kick it into the long grass. We need to tackle the financial issues that we face in our IGIB and make sure it is on a strong and secure footing going forward. Because to do anything less is a complete dereliction of duty of every single member in this chamber to the people of East Ayrshire. This is not easy, but we have put political differences aside to make sure we deliver for the people of East Ayrshire. And I absolutely commend this budget and proposals that have been put forward that are not fully costed. We're talking about an extra amount of money for brown bins. I'm against the brown bin tax. I've always made that clear. But the reality is this council took a decision by majority vote last year that those prices would go up in line with the Scottish average. That was the decision council took. I didn't like it. I didn't vote for it. But that is the decision the council took at that time. So £160,000, nearly £156,000 added on. A financial position, as the Chief Financial Officer has outlined, is already at a difficult and very, very close to the wire. Audit Scotland, I'm sure, will love it if we start going at 5% and adding fees and charges in, or sorry, cutting fees and charges and taking that balance below 2%. That opens us all up to another level of scrutiny. And listen, I don't mind scrutiny, but we're not doing the people of East Ayrshire, doing the right thing by the people of East Ayrshire. I think it's a dangerous proposal that has been set by the Conservative group.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Sally Cogley.
Thank you very much. I have 2 points to make. Firstly, in relation to the leader's comments about the early intervention funds, and the leader has asked for a meeting within the next 4 weeks. I absolutely endorse and support that. I think it's critical to everything that we're doing. And I think some of us have got a lot of ideas about how that money can be probably spent better even than we are doing at the moment. So that's my first point. The second point, in relation to the proposed 6.9% increase, and I make no apologies for my brain working perhaps slower than some people's brains, does that give us enough scope for the 3% for the for the GFUB draw? And does that then leave us with sufficient funds to carry out what each of the departments has budgeted and submitted within their budgets to Joe? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cogley. Joe?
Thank you, Provost. So the council tax increase at 6.9% with the draw at 31st of March and passed across to the Integration Joint Board as set out in the paper yesterday would mean that the uncommitted balance at 1st of April would be at 2.14%. So that's helpful. And in terms of the allocations to council services as included in the table yesterday, which was a balanced budget, then that also assumes that the budget that's been approved, you're being asked to approve today, would be sufficient in terms of the budget's been passed out to services, albeit the paper also highlights the things we should be alive to next year around pay awards and around UK Shared Prosperity Fund, teaching, those things are there as well. So that's a sufficient budget, but it's been mindful of the challenges that councils face, the services face, as members have already intimated, in the year ahead.
Yep, thanks, Joe. Eddie?
Thanks, Provost. It's just, the leader mentioned that over the next number of weeks we would come forward and look at Early Intervention and Prevention Fund. What I've actually asked, our officers to do is look at all the range of different funds that we're investing in the community and share that, with elected members. So, we're putting investment in poverty and equality, whole family wellbeing fund, place-based funding, fairer futures funding, as well as early intervention and prevention. So this has to say all that in front of members so as they can see the collective impact in that. And once members see the collective impact in that, it will be for members then to look at how do they want to deploy future funds, around that. So it's actually seen just now. I don't know that we're seeing the full picture. I think we had a good paper towards the end of last year, we brought that forward through Pauline, in terms of that. But, seeing it all, I think will be really important. And maybe seeing in action some of that as well, with some of the people, how it actually impacts. And that's a bit separate then from moving on to then say, we've seen that, we understand that. How do we move on to think about the future? So that's what the leader, and other members have asked me to do.
Thanks, Eddie. Councillor Cogley.
Does this mean that we'll be using the Early Intervention Fund for things that it wasn't intended to be used for?
There's absolutely no intention of that, at all. As we know, the whole purpose of this Early Intervention Fund is actually to, first of all, provide services where it's required out there, but the overall bit was how do we intervene early that then costs less for us as a council to actually deliver in the future. That's every time we look at it, we actually say what will be the impact in future delivery.
Thank you. That's important. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Councillor David Richardson.
Thank you, Provost. While I'm minded to support the SNP Labour proposal for a 6.9% increase in council tax, I actually think we're missing the elephant in the room here, because anybody that knows me would know that I'd rather be having a go at the Westminster government, but I think we need to look at the Scottish government here, because, and these are figures that I'm taking online, so if Joe and the finance team want to correct me later on about these, then please do. But although the absolute cash figure going to councils rises year on year this year, I do believe that the percentage share of the Scottish Government's total revenue budget allocated to local authorities is fallen from 33.1% in 2024-2025 to 32.2% in 2025-26. So it's almost a 1% drop in the total Scottish Government budget that's coming to local authorities this year. Obviously, please check these, because these are figures I'm taking off the internet. But I think the general gist of these figures is correct. Now, this suggests that while local authority funding is increasing in cash terms, other parts of the Scottish budget, so obviously important parts of the budget like health, social security, other portfolios, their needs are growing at a faster rate in the eyes of the Scottish Government than the local government. But local government, as we all know, is on its knees. And I know that the leader through COSLA, and I know that COSLA fights the case for local government. But what I would like to do today, because we do have to increase every resident in East Ayrshire's council tax by 6.9%, which is better than 8%, but it's still 6.9%. What I'd like the council to do is to write to the Scottish Government and ask them, lead, that next year the actual percentage of the Scottish Government's budget that comes to local government rises instead of falls.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Richardson. We will... Leader?
Well, seeing as there'll be a new government, that's one to ask in the Hustings, and maybe that's where that kind of should be directed. I mean, I fight every other month at Cosler for a bigger share of the cake, and that's something we're supposed to try and achieve through the very House agreement. But we'll continue to push the case everywhere and anywhere we can. But I suggest that's one for the Hustings.
Sure. Yep, Councillor Richardson.
I'd just like to say to the leader, come on, Dougie, we've all seen the polls. We can, it's going to be the SNP that'll be in charge again. So let's get that letter sent and fight up our corner.
Leader?
Absolutely take nothing for granted at all. And I'll be writing. I'll be tomorrow, because after Cabinet and after Council on a Thursday, I'm at Cosler on a Friday. It's a busy week for me, and I'll be making the case there. And I think I've written so many letters to the First Minister and various junior ministers. And I think the Education Secretary could do a wee letter, but I'll not say any more at that in this stage.
Fair. Thank you. Members, before I ask the movers of the motions to sum up, is there any other questions, comments? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Provost. I just would like some assurance here in terms of the proposals that's been put forward by Labour and the SNP, which would see a Band D rate of £1,717.28. Can the Conservative leader just confirm what his 5% rise would be for me, please? Just what that would do to Band D. And I can come back in after that if possible.
Yep, Councillor Watts.
Yes, certainly. I will come back in on that. The Band D, which is currently £1,606.44, on a 5% increase, which I do believe is responsible, would be £1,686.76, which would be an annual rise of £80.32, or £6.69 per month.
Yep.
Thank you, Provost. Yep, that was what I thought it would be, but I thought I would just double check your maths there. So for the difference of £31, less than £31, you are prepared to put this council in financial peril where we have less than 2% in our reserves for £31. You're prepared to say to the people of East Ayrshire, your granny's in hospital, we can't give any extra money at the IJB, she's not going to a care home, you'll just need to suck it up. Or you're prepared to say that those who are desperately waiting in care packages aren't going to get them for £31, less than £31 a year. That's the situation that's been proposed by the Conservative group. I hope they can justify that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watcher.
I think I understand what Councillor Douglas is saying on the integration on the IJB and healthcare services. No, I don't want to see people waiting, but our council departments have to stick within their budgets. And, you know, we have to be responsible, and part of our job and part of our role as councillors is to protect and help the people in East Ayrshire. And people are struggling on household budgets out there. And to take money, and I'm not saying we shouldn't take money out of the uncommitted balances to go into the IJB. I'm not saying that. Right, at all. But departments have to live within their budgets. And the IJB hasn't lived within its budget, which has put us to a point where we are, you know, it's put itself with a £10 million overspend. We have already put 6.73 million in. I'm not saying we shouldn't put any more. What I'm saying is we can balance our budget on 5%, but I don't believe we should be taking that money that we need extra and adding it on to already hard-pressed residents within our communities. You know, it's just, in a sense, it's this Labour tax and spend. We've got, it really is. It's Labour tax and spend. And unlike the Labour Party, I'm not prepared to do a U-turn on what I am proposing here.
Okay, yep, absolutely fine. Thank you. Councillor Graham Boyd.
Thanks again, Provost. Yeah, looking at the 6.9%, I've just done a sum there. If it was 5% compared to 6.9%, in Band D, it's a difference of £30.52 per annum. Now, I can't support the Conservative motion because it's reckless for reasons discussed. But I do have to say, even with the 6.9%, every person in Band D in East Ayrshire, remember that's where we'll look, we set with Band D, £30.52. Every person in East Ayrshire is having to pay that because of financial mismanagement of the health and social care, So I do have to highlight, even though I will be voting for it, because I don't think there's any other option. Second quick point, the leader mentioned his doors always opened. It would have been good if the independents had heads up at the 6.9% this morning, there's 6 independents. When we look at us as a collective, we're actually the third, not the fourth, the third biggest group there. So just hopefully in future, if there's discussions like that, the independents, even if it's at 9:45, can be involved in that. And I appreciate, Leader, your door's always open, but it'd have been good to have known in advance about this morning. Thanks, Provost.
Through you, Provost, just taking the last point first, members will recall, and the independent members we have will recall, advice was previously given about how those independents could organise themselves as a collective, which was the word you used. And had you been arranged as a group of independents, then you would be regarded as a collective in a group of 6. But that decision was taken by you collectively when there was 5 independents not to arrange as a group. So the law requires that you're dealt with as independent and individual members of the council. In terms of the collective piece, in terms of the rest, I'm conscious that Joe spends a lot of time and effort going round all members, including independents and individuals, in terms of presenting it. But at the end of the day, that can only get us to Cabinet yesterday and Council today. And to be fair, there's always a lot of movement. There's a 24-hour period between Cabinet yesterday and Council today. And it's a matter for the members, but there will be no absolute obligation to come along and bring others along, although I think everybody makes a reasonable effort to be clear in what their position is. But it's a very fluid situation. That's all I would say. Also, just in terms generally, Provost, and sorry to do this to Joe again, but we have in the past had been reminded, and it might be helpful to remind members again, what the impact is of council tax benefit on any increase, and who actually may be expected to pay any additional increase, and how the benefit actually impacts on the poorest paid in, the least well off in the lower value properties, because it's actually an increase to the benefit they receive rather than the payments they make in some cases, not in every case, but it is a relevant factor, because the point's been made in the chamber that everybody would require to pay either the increases, and that's not strictly the case. So in the furtherance of giving you best information, maybe just through you, Provost, if Joe could just clarify again the position around council tax benefit and what that has on the impact on any council tax increase in general terms.
Yeah, that's important. Joe?
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, David. So, David's absolutely right. We did a consultation on council tax a few months ago. It showed that East Ayrshire Council has 60,000 dwellings or households, and of those 60,000 dwellings, around 42% are in Band A. And most of those residents or households in Band A will receive council tax benefit. It's called council tax reduction. We receive £9.5 million a year from Scottish Government to pay that grant. We are currently spending £10.5 million. We're spending £1 million of your own money, given the level of demand and need. I know that at times I confuse the life out of you when we talk about what 1% council tax means. Sometimes it's 700,000, sometimes it's 750, because what we try and do behind the scenes is to adjust it for income forgone, both in terms of collection rates, but also in terms of the amount of that percentage that will be eaten up by council tax benefit in that £1 million that you give. So we estimate that, that 1% is about 750, maybe a bit more than that. But when we talk to you, we call it £700,000 because we try and make that adjustment. So there does come a point, and David's quite right, there is a sweet spot in the diagram where the higher level of council tax, then you end up paying more in terms of council tax benefit. So that's what we try and manage as well. But that's a very good point that David's raised, and it just demonstrates that as a council, we are actually receiving an allocation, but it's insufficient for the level of demand that's out there.
Right, no, thank you very much for that. It's interesting. Members, is there any other questions or comments on any of the motion or amendment raised, or will we go straight to summing up and into the voting? Members, you all good? Yeah. Well, Leader, I'll bring you in if you want to sum up.
Thanks. Thanks, Provost. I would like to just make a couple of comments first. In terms of the 6.9%, as David Mitchell and Joe has suggested, these situations are fluid, and the discussions, I'm pleased to, one of the fruits of the discussions of our SNP group with the Labour group was to look at ways how we can reduce it. And we also had the input from a number of the independents who will recognise some of the changes they suggested in the budget as well, particularly around the early intervention and prevention fund, which has delivered so much to supplement some of the money that we've been getting from the government. I think their preschool meals alone, there's over £2 million in the last 3 years that we have supplemented food for some of the poorest children in our communities. We've extended school and footwear clothing grants to 3 and 4-year-olds. All these would appear to be good, but we need to come, and I'm looking forward to the summit to see what's actually working and what's not, and have a good, lively discussion at that time to see how we can best serve our communities. Provost, this has been really difficult this year given the circumstances. I really do worry, just it's an election year, and I've tried to show restraint in that myself, by trying to get as many people of the council to coalesce around some of the difficulties that this council faces, and I'm really pleased to have had the cooperation from the Labour group and other independents, and ourselves to get our head out on the table, because we can see, again, I'll repeat what Councillor Maben had said there, just in terms of how this affects people on the ground getting their bills, and faced with so many health problems. We heard this week in Scotland across Ayrshire, healthy life expectancy in Ayrshire is disgracefully going down. That's something we really need to attack on a health basis and an economic basis too. And I would look forward to hearing some of the kind of discussions and how we can do that and how we can achieve that. Provost, cutting this money from that would hopefully to help the Health and Social Care Partnership break even is something we don't do lightly. But we realise if we don't do it, the consequences will be some of our elderly people that having to queue. East Ayrshire's got a remarkable record in terms of delivering no waiting list for care packages. If we, it's already under threat. If we take that type of money off the Health and Social Care Partnership, my goodness, that's going to have an absolute devastating effect on families. Myself and Councillor Maitland just the other day, there's so many things that we can do within the health partnership. And just as a wee example, yesterday, and I was speaking to the Deputy Provost about it as well, was when we were speaking to a local audiologist who was telling us that some people, it's taken them 4 and 5 years to get their ears, put the issues with their ears evaluated, and they're often running about with basic things that we could do as a community, like clean hearing aids and things like maybe, just basically maintaining them. So a lot of people that don't bother to put batteries in that we can do as a community. Maybe that's something we should be looking at, because we know that people don't get their hearing checked. For an example, it brings on early sets of Alzheimer's and other serious illnesses and complex in later life. So, Provost, this hasn't been an easy budget. I'm pleased to see that we've got one it's in terms of the whole Ayrshire, we're easily the lowest increase. That doesn't give me any great satisfaction, other than we continue to do the job. We review what we do. We invite all 32 members to participate. We haven't got the moment monopoly in good ideas. We probably have, but I'm open to suggestions as always. But hopefully, when we have this summit, we can discuss that at length and see what we can do for our communities. And let's get away from the posturising and actually concentrate and delivering for our communities, because that's what that's what I did, and that's why I chose to be a councillor for East Ayrshire Council. Provost, I move.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Coughlin, I just check, is this a point of order because we are on to the summing up now?
No, it isn't.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Linda Maben.
Thank you, Provost. I'm going to be very brief here. I stand by everything I said earlier on. I don't think I need to repeat any of the points I made. The proposals from the Conservative group are reckless. They are dangerous. Nobody wants council tax rises. I mean, no council in the country wants them, but this is reality and we need to deal with the reality. I don't really think I need to say any more, but still happy to second the proposals. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Maben. We'll move on to the amendment, and Councillor Neil Watts, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Provost. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor, but just before you do, Councillor Adams, you've still got your 5 minutes and support us second if you want to send now, just to be absolutely fair.
If it's okay, I'll go after Neil, if that's okay.
Absolutely fine, yep. Councillor Potts.
Thank you, Provost. No, I will stand by our motion. It isn't reckless when it states in our reports that we can balance the budget at 5%. It says that in our council report. So to actually say that it's reckless is, in my view, sort of stretching it a little. I just want to sum up to what Graham Boyd was saying. I'm not trying to pull rabbits out of hats at all, in any way, shape or form with this. The Chief Financial Officer in our reports states that we can balance our budget on 5%. That's what it says. If I was being reckless, I would suggest 2 or 3%. I'm not. I'm suggesting 5%, which is actually what is within our reports. You know, the £156,000 that it would cost within to freeze the garden waste permit would just have to be subsumed within that department's budget, because as I've said before, and I said a little bit earlier, I think our departments need to stick by their budgets that we've given them. Thank you. That's all I would like to say, Provost. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watts. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. The term political posturing has been made. If we wanted to politically posture, we could, as Councillor Watts suggests, go for a much lower one, 3%, for example, the rate of inflation, but we haven't went for that. We went for what has been looked at by the Chief Financial Officer as a balanced budget. So you have a level of choice here. You can go with the 6.9, or you can go with the 5%. Both are balanced. In terms of political posturing, if Councillor Douglas thinks the extra 1.9 will solve all the problems and ills of the health and social care team, then I think he's politically posturing, because we could add it by 20% and the problems wouldn't go away. Councillor Richardson alludes to the fact that the Scottish Government don't give us as much as we would like. Well, that's absolutely true. In most of Scotland, we're living longer, but we're not living any better. But in East Ayrshire, we're living shorter and we're still not living any better. That needs to be addressed. I think in terms of scrutiny, I'm comfortable with scrutiny, as Councillor Douglas also said, but the scrutiny that I have to face on a daily basis is not from Audit Scotland, it's from the electorate of East Ayrshire Council. These are the people that vote us in and are the people that will ultimately vote us out. So we've got a choice. It's 5% or 6.9. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, members, we've heard both the motion and the amendment. I'm going to hedge my bets and say that we're just going to go straight to the voting. Yeah. Julie, can I pass to you then? Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Provost. So we have the motion by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Linda Maben. The amendment is by Councillor Watts, seconded by Councillor Adams. So I'll now call the roll, and if you can indicate either your support for the motion or the amendment. Provost Claire Leach.
Motion, please.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Motion, please.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
Motion, please, Julie.
Councillor John McFadden.
Amendment.
Deputy Provost John McGee.
Motion.
Councillor Caroline Barton.
Motion.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Motion.
Councillor David Richardson,
Motion.
Councillor James Adams,
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Linton, Councillor Douglas Reid,
Motion.
Councillor Jane Sangster,
Motion.
Councillor Graham Barton,
The motion.
Councillor Graham Boyd,
Motion, please.
Councillor Barry Douglas,
Motion.
Councillor Neil Ingram,
Motion, please.
Councillor Peter Maben,
Further motion, please.
Councillor Claire Maitland, Councillor Jim Todd,
Motion.
Councillor Beverley Clark,
Motion.
Councillor Sally Cogley,
Motion.
Councillor Kevin McGregor,
Motion, please.
Councillor Linda Maben,
Motion, please, Julie.
Councillor William Lennox,
On the motion.
Councillor Alison Simmons,
Amendment.
Councillor June Kyle,
Motion, please.
Councillor Jim McMahon,
Motion, please.
Councillor Neil Watts,
Amendment.
Councillor Drew Filson,
Motion.
Councillor Jennifer Hogg,
Motion.
and Councillor Jim Kyle. Thanks, members. The motion is carried by 27 votes to 4.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, members. Moving on to agenda item number 5. This is building a future East Ayrshire asset management framework and capital investment. Pages 74 of your papers, and this is to consider remit and recommendations, of which there is a copy enclosed from the Cabinet meeting held on the 25th of February. Please do refer to the Cabinet report in this matter that were issued to you on the 19th of February. Again, members, just a wee reminder of the debate and time for speeches as previously mentioned. Just keep these in mind. And members will now consider remit and recommendations from this Cabinet meeting. I'll open to the floor. Leader.
Thanks, Provost. Just to move the recommendation. I think it was well discussed yesterday. And I've just indicated in my budget speech, there's a very ambitious plan, and just to repeat once again, some of the funding behind it as generated from other sources, and really like to thank the officers for doing so. And just there's stuff coming out of the ground right across East Ayrshire, and that's something we're absolutely proud of.
Yep, thank you, Leader. Councillor David Richardson.
Thanks, Provost. All the backbench, as I refer to as our independent councillors, were asked to watch the video of Cabinet, and I was quite glad that I did, because I just want to clarify something with the leader as to what the SNP administration policy is on long-term borrowing, because during yesterday's video, Councillor Graham Barton, who I respect and I've worked closely with Graham in the past, he's a good councillor, but Councillor Barton stated that East Ayrshire Council should not take out any more long-term borrowing
Point
until
order.
2031.
Councillor Richardson, just a wee second, I'll hear it. Councillor Barton.
Thanks, Provost, and thanks for letting me in there, David. So, Provost, I've been misrepresented in this. I've been misrepresented in internal emails within the council and on social media. I am going to explain this. I shouldn't have to, because the video recordings there is a matter of public record. People can go and look what I said at yesterday's Cabinet meeting. But I'm going to have to defend myself here and go through this. Any comments I made yesterday were in support of the strategic principles of the asset management framework. And any comments that I made yesterday, they're also contained within the Cabinet paper. If you go to page 48, paragraph 6 of the paper, and it states there, limit future large-scale borrowing, maximise external and alternative funding. Now, at that point, I highlighted that the excellent work that's taken place in securing that substantial external funding, and that was all plain to see in the appendix of the capital programme. I then also commented in page 48, paragraph 8, to maintain and enhance our current assets. We will support that as well, and also to review and rationalise our assets where appropriate. I also commented that we have, as the leader just said there, we've got a substantial capital programme running right through to 2031. I just want to point out this administration's got a proud history of delivering. We've delivered over the past 15 years £1 billion in a capital programme. But what's more important, we've also got a proud history of prudent financial governance. So that is my point of order.
Okay, Councillor Barton, yep, I accept your point of order. Councillor David.
Listen, like any other member of the public, I heard what I heard in that video, so the public can take what they heard just the same as I did. But what I would ask is...
Councillor Richardson, sorry, through you, I think just pause to reflect there. Okay, the video will be available, so yes.
I've watched it, David.
And you're offering your opinion, but the Chamber's also been told by the member you're referring to, he's given a clear indication of what he said. What I'm suggesting to this council is it's not for council today to pour over the video from yesterday. Anyone can do that in their own time. However, Councillor Barton has made a clear statement to the Chamber.
Okay.
And I would suggest to any member that in responding to such a clear statement of what they believe they said, anyone should be very clear in offering their opinion, that they're offering their opinion. And I would steer clear and advise any member in this chamber to steer clear of making any statement that might suggest they don't believe or accept what someone else has said, because it is a matter of ascertainable fact. And as I tried to explain before the meeting, what's more important is the paper and the extract that's in front of council today, which was recommendation 15 pertains, and the recommendation from Cabinet to Council is to recognise the challenges and opportunities identified across a range of projects and to ensure that the overall programme remains within the current 5-year spend level and agree the reduction in budget allocations as set out in paragraph 175 of the report and reprofiling in the appendix to the report. So whatever anyone said in the chamber yesterday, Councillor Richardson, this council isn't being asked today to take a decision on whether or not to borrow any more money. And your question to the administration remains for them to answer, but I would have thought the answer would involve referring back to a week ago in this chamber where the council took the decision not to borrow. However, that's a matter for the leader. But the point I'm trying to make is once a councillor has explained his position, I would advise any councillor to be very, very careful in suggesting that that wasn't a truthful statement.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Richardson, yep. I do accept Councillor Barton's point of order, and in an effort to move the meeting on, could I just ask that you move on for that, please?
Well, my question to the leader is then, how does that equate? Because it seems to be diametrically opposed to the amendment that was brought to the motion only a few short days ago, because the motion was, the amendment, sorry, was all about when a suitable master plan comes before this council, that finance would be considered. Now, finance is going to involve
sorry, you asked a question, now you're actually looking to revisit last week's decision.
No, I'm asking the leader, what is the
policy?
policy?
Councillor Richardson, last week this council took a decision on your motion. That decision was taken. You're now seeking to revisit that decision because you made reference to the amendment that was put forward in the debate last week. It's not part of the business and agenda today. It's last week's business.
It seems to be the amendment last week is diametrically opposed to point 15.
Councillor Richardson, I did state at the beginning of the meeting, please respect my position as chair. I am doing my absolute best to help this meeting move on. And I hope that all members would agree that I am a very tolerant chair and I want everybody heard, including everybody. When I ask somebody to stop speaking, please do respect it. I would say the same to any member, and I would also ask when there's an officer addressing, please put your mic off and just wait for people to finish, and I will invite you back in to speak. Every single member in this chamber, okay? Councillor Richardson, did you want to come back in?
I don't believe I'm going to get an answer, so what's the point?
Okay, right.
No, you, Chair. The question was, what's the SNP Group's position on future borrowing? Leader, would you like to answer that question or not?
We'll always stick to the guidance from our 95, Section 95 officer. And just to remind Councillor Richardson, just in terms of what Councillor Barton said in some of the earlier comments, I think if I'm trying to be helpful here, but that kind of clarification in that respect agenda that should go right round the 32 members before jumping onto social media, I would have asked clarification of my councillor colleague before I did that and get that clarification, and we can get a proper debate about all these kind of issues. But as it stands just now, my answer to the specific question is that the SNP group would always stick to the guidance of the Section 95 officer, and would remind Councillor Richardson that all finance doesn't always include council borrowing. It can get it from other sources. And as I said earlier in my statements 2 or 3 times now, the half the capital programme is money that we've obtained from other sources.
Provost, my advice to you would be, as chair, if you are so minded, you'd be entitled to conclude the questions been asked and answered, and in the interest of the effective conduct of the debate, you would be entitled to move on to the next matter.
Thank you, David. Members, I'll open it to further discussion and debate past that. Can I just check, Leader, do you have a seconder to your motion?
Second that, Provost.
Great, Deputy Leader. Thank you very much for that. Members, for the discussion purposes, is there any other comments? Councillor Richardson.
How do I note my dissent to point 15 on the paper? Because I don't believe that if a future master plan comes before this council, we'll ever be able to finance it without a level of borrowing. So how do I note my dissent to the paper?
Okay, yep, David.
Councillor Richardson, as I explained yesterday, in accordance with standing orders, any member in the chamber can move anything. And if they don't get a seconder, they can ask for the dissent to be recorded. And that advice hasn't changed since yesterday.
Okay, yep.
Just record that.
No. You would have to move a motion to borrow money, which wasn't the same as last week's motion, because the standing orders don't allow the council to revisit a decision within 6 months, which I also explained yesterday. So if you want to move again today that the council borrows money, and if you get a seconder, it will go to the vote. And if you don't get a seconder, you can have your dissent recorded. I'm sorry you're looking perplexed, but that's clearly set out in the standing orders approved by this council for the conduct of meetings that I referred you to yesterday, and told you they're both on the website and they're in the induction box. We give every member a copy on election. So the standing orders are the standing orders. If the councillors don't like them, change them, but you have to live by them until you do. And the bottom line is if you want to move now that this council should again reconsider borrowing money to invest in the town centre, then if you don't get a seconder, you're entitled to have your dissent recorded, but only in those circumstances. Them's the rules.
Them's the rules. Thank you.
So, do you want to move anything, Councillor Richardson?
Yes,
Yeah.
as them's the rules. If we just look at point 15 of the recommendations.
This is back to the extract for the benefit of all members, building a future East Ayrshire. It's the extract from the minute of the Cabinet yesterday. It was item 3, it's recommendation 15. It's the one I read out a few moments ago, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Okay, so I'd like to change that to recognise the challenges and opportunities identified across a range of projects, and then to delete the rest of it, and then to say, if a suitable master plan comes before this council, the council will consider borrowing of extra funds for this major capital project in order to improve our town centre in Kilmarnock, which is badly needed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richardson, do you have a seconder? No.
There's no seconder. The motion falls and Councillor Richardson can have his dissent recorded.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, in this case then, are we happy to go with the motion as stands? Leader?
I've never said that ever as the leader of this council, but can I ask all members, I'm not mentioning any, to respect you as the chair. I think what we've seen there is just a lack of respect to you as a chair, and I hope that we could be a wee bit circumvent about things and just reflect on that and give you that respect, Provost.
Okay, appreciate that very much, Leader. Thank you. I just do my wee best. So thank you, everybody. Councillor Richardson, is it relevant?
No, it's to come back to the leader there. Claire, you have my respect. And, you know, that goes without saying.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Richardson. Members, are we happy to move the agree with recommendations contained? Perfect, thank you, members. Okay, moving on to Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy. And this is page 75 to 143 in your papers, members. And I'll bring in Robin Baker to take us through the report. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, members. The 2026-27 Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy follows a similar layout and presentation to that of recent years, with the covering report hopefully assisting with the interpretation and understanding of what is by necessity a lengthy and detailed document. The Treasury Strategy links the Council's revenue budget report and capital report, as the planned capital expenditure determines the Council's borrowing requirements, with the cost of servicing this debt charged annually to the General Fund and the housing revenue accounts. The strategy should ideally provide you with confidence that the Council is complying with guidance and regulation, including SITFR's Prudential Code for capital finance, and in particular it should provide assurance that the Council's capital investment plans are prudent, affordable and sustainable in the medium to longer term, that the financing of the capital investment plan and all the cash flows are properly planned and transacted, and that cash balances are appropriately invested to generate optimum returns whilst always considering the security and liquidity of the principal. Members, the previous report on the agenda today set out projected gross capital expenditure for the next 5 years totalling 495 million, which will be financed in part by grants, reserves and revenue sources in the amount of 206 million. The remaining balance of 289 million is unfinanced and therefore must be met from borrowing. Paragraph 19 notes this level of capital activity, and this represents the first prudential indicator that members are asked to approve. The tables at paragraph 23 show how this capital expenditure increases the outstanding advances from 596 million to 807 million, with table 4 setting out the profile of the amounts that will be charged to revenue to recover that over future years. The second prudential indicator is the capital financing requirement, which is the total of all the borrowing requirements of the Council, combining the debt created by prior and current year net capital expenditure and planned expenditure with other long-term liabilities, such as our PPP and NPD schools and finance leases. This can be viewed as being the Council's outstanding mortgage balance, and Table 6 at paragraph 32 illustrates how this will increase from 713 million at the 1st of April 2026 to 908 million by the 31st of March 2031. Paragraph 34 sets out the liability index, which highlights the gap between our current debt levels and those required to support this approved expenditure. Any requirement to borrow results in an exposure to interest rate, liquidity and refinancing risk. Paragraph 36 shows the expected debt position. As with any mortgage, there is a requirement to borrow, and Table 9 shows that over the 5-year period, new debt of 419 million is expected to be borrowed, with scheduled repayments of 149 million. As a result, the external debt increases to 772 million by 31st March 2031, against a borrowing CFR of 838 million. This difference is the under-borrowed position, with the gap of 66 million being financed using internal balances. Paragraph 46 highlights the General Fund debt financing costs rising each year as a percentage of revenue stream, but forecast to remain below the 8% local indicator. But it does highlight debt charges as a level of 31 million per annum by 2030-31. Paragraph 49 shows a similar upward movement for the HRA debt charges, which reached 28.2% or 28 pence in the pound of revenue stream by 2031. Provost, the majority of the Council's cash deposits result from the timing of cash flows, with grant being received in advance of expenditure or borrowing being secured prior to assets being purchased or built. Paragraph 50 highlights that in placing cash on deposit, the key considerations of security of the monies alongside liquidity to access the funds always come before yield, which with funds only placed with counterparties approved within the investment strategy. Paragraph 60 and 61 set out the projected capital financing costs based on the current capital plan over the next 5 years, which combine the annual principal payments with allocations of interest and expenses. This should help inform future financial planning decisions. Provost, the recommendations are set out in paragraph 3, with Council asked to approve the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and the potential indicators. I'm happy to stop at that point and take any questions. Provost.
Robin, thank you very much. Members, will open it to the floor for any questions. Councillor Linton.
Thank you very much, Provost, and thank you very much, Robin, for a very clear and concise report, I think detailing just exactly how committed this council has been to spend money wisely across all parts of the authority on assets that bring huge benefit to their whole East Ayrshire community, and I commend the report.
Thank you, Councillor Linton. Members, anyone else? Getting off lightly, Robin. Thank you very much. Members are happy to approve. Yeah, thank you. That's agreed, Robin. Thank you very much. Members, we're moving on to exclusion of press and public. I'm happy to go with the majority. We want a wee 10-minute break to decompress a wee bit, or do you want to move straight into the PI? Yeah, I'm getting a nod. Right, so if I could ask people to be back in the chambers for 11:45, that gives you time for a wee cup of tea. Okay, thank you.
IT, could we stop the recording, please? Thanks.